All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Analytics in Action by Association Analytics. This is our Navigating the Member Journey with Data webinar series. We're going to give it just a minute for everyone to get logged on. Our fun question for the day. So think about this. Some of you may have an answer right away. You might have to think about it. If you weren't in the profession that you're in right now, so I'm in marketing, and you could pick any other profession, what would it be? So mine would be chef and or baker, because I love cooking and baking. And it's super fun and creative, much like marketing is creative. So that's what I would do. What about you, Teri?
Wait, I have to know, Katrina, what did you cook last?
Oh, oh no. What did I cook?
I
I was thinking
didn't
of
mean to put you on the spot quite like that.
oh yes. Oh, you know what? It was chicken Milanese. It's from Alex
Oh,
Garnishelli from Food Network. Has a recipe that I love and it's super simple. So I'll throw it in the chat.
okay.
Interested.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love that.
Read the books.
So what Teri, what would be yours?
I think that given my full-time van lifestyle now, I would, I keep kind of my van life pretty quiet, I have lived out loud in my association profession for so long. But I think I might flip the script. I mean, I love association work, and our community is amazing. But I think I would go live out loud being a van lifer and, share all the content about what life is like on the road.
Huh.
That would probably be what I do.
What about
Awesome.
you, Bill?
Yeah, I think someone said they would be a pro golfer. I think baseball would have been mine.
Mm.
It's long since passed now, but yeah, that was aspirational. Good to see.
I like
Okay.
this one. Barbara Armentrout, Katrina said, mine would be getting paid to eat what Christina is cooking up. So it sounds like a critic, a food critic, Barbara. I like it.
There we go.
Musician, professional organizer, all right? Marie Kondo. Okay.
I mean, between the professional organizer and the landscaper,
Yeah,
I mean,
Those that sound great. Wine and
cocktail bar.
cocktail bar owner, I like that. Yeah. Oh, a brewery owner would be good too. I might do that.
mm,
All right.
yeah, some place where people are happy to go to.
Yes,
That's
There you
exactly.
go.
yeah.
There you go.
All
It
right.
seems to come up for me. Sorry, just one more quick detour. Um, it seems to come up very often that I don't know what this says about me, but that alcohol is a good business.
Mm.
Like I keep like getting reminded of that, like these weird venues that really have nothing going for them, and they sell alcohol and they become like really popular. It's an
Hmm.
interesting thing. So I probably shouldn't have said that on the recorded webinar, but just something that I've observed
I think a
It's
lot.
two
I think
recently.
a lot of us would say it. This
it's
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, Bill. It's all good.
you're in
All
a
right.
safe place.
Tina.
Okay. Cool. So let's jump into it. About 3 minutes past. So yes, we're going to talk about non-dues revenue. Um, Probably a lot of you know Teri. She's like the industry expert on non-dues revenue. So we're lucky to have her. Mostly, we're going to be talking about uh, some new ideas and how you might do that. And of course, since it's association analytics, we will kind of approach all of it with a data wrapper around it. So, Gina, go ahead and introduce us.
All right. So Bill is who's just speaking. That's Bill Conforti. He's our SVP of Strategy and Solutions at Association Analytics. So he works closely with our product and development teams to create and deliver our analytics platform, Acumen AI, that helps associations find insights and take action with their data, like non-dues revenue opportunities, which we'll get into. And then we're very excited to have non-dues revenue expert with us today, Teri Carden. So she has more than 15 years experience in the association industry, helping create innovative campaigns, diving into different technologies. And then she founded several resources for the industry, for the association industry, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So Non-Dues-a-Palooza, AMS Fest, and reviewmyams.com. And outside of work, she loves to cook. hike and explore the world in her converted Sprinter van, which she was just talking about. Maybe a new career path, perhaps. So
Awesome.
I will turn it over to Bill to dive into the content.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so here's what's on the menu for today. Of course, intro and polls as usual. We'll talk quickly about how data is key to optimizing non-dues revenue. This is not your grandma's NDR is in a different webinar, but today we're going to talk about what's not your grandma's NDR. And we'll talk about some examples, and of course we'll end with Q&A, but as always, welcome to jump in with chat, comments, questions, whatever, as we go along. So this is part 4 of 6 in the series where we're talking about journey, optimizing journey using data. So talking about non-dues revenue today. Next time, we're going to be talking about segmentation, right? How to not use that one size fit all marketing campaign. Katrina has just dropped a link where you can sign up for that one. And hopefully we will see you there. Here is a QR code where you can do the same. All right, so who is Association Analytics? The 10-second version. We're a company that only works with associations. We only do data and analytics work. Been doing it for a long time. We are the developers of Acumen AI, which is a platform some of you've heard of, and sometimes we feature on these webinars that helps you integrate and aggregate your data and kind of make sense of it, right, through visualizations and analyses, and increasingly leveraging AI elements as well. Okay, so this is where we get our phones out. We're going to do the first of a couple of polls. So get your phones out, and if you'll just point it to the QR up in the upper left, you'll see there's polls and there is Q&A. So we're going to be using the poll functionality. I want to actually see if it's going to let me participate as well. And so the question is, what percentage of your association's revenue comes from membership dues?
Do we need me to go?
Yeah, right. We should have some background, right?
I definitely would not be a singer or a backup singer in my next profession.
We did have a couple of musicians. I don't know if there was any singers in particular, but okay. So what do we have here? A lot of us are saying we're about 50-50. Not too many of us are 75 or above. Nobody says 100%. A few of us don't know. Okay. Any big surprises here? I think 50-50 is pretty close to what we see a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, but this is that 50% range, I think, Bill, is uh exactly why, associations need to be so concerned is that other 50%.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Staying on top of that.
One thing, I did not make a poll question for this, but just in the chat, regardless of the percentage of your revenue that comes from dues, the second poll question that I was considering, and I didn't put it in, is one where we show a bunch of graphs and says which one looks most like your trend in membership revenue over time. So I won't make you analyze charts today, but just in the chat, if it's kind of if it's declining a little or if it's increasing a lot, just kind of describe the trend in your membership dues revenue over, say, the last 10 years, right? Well, I say 10 because we had kind of a big disruptor, right, for a couple of years in that space. So increasing a little, downwards, right? This is, right, I don't know, Teri, you say it's pretty common, right, that we're seeing like sort of that slight decrease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I mean,
yeah, or
most
steady, steady or declining. ASAE has a ratio report that they did several years ago, and it definitely shows declining. I think in 1933, when there was a report that was done, it was like 97% of due or of revenue for any single association was dues. So the world has changed.
Yeah, for sure, right? And so, obviously, as your member dues decline, right, we all want to stay in business, so we need to be looking at other ways that we can make up for that difference. Hence non-dues revenue is topic that's kind of increasing in popularity. So with that, our second poll question is, what do you see as the most promising non-dues revenue opportunity for your organization in the next 12 months?
Now, I love this question because and I appreciate, Bill, you guys entering this one in here, because I have asked this question for the last 2 years in a row. And I might need to dig around here for the results that I had from a couple of years ago. So I'm curious to see what is trending.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. It's not surprising to me at all that in-person events is the leader. However, I thought it might run away with it a little more, right? And in fact, I was even thinking maybe we ask this question, but exclude in-person events, from the choices, just to see how the other ones flesh out. But this is pretty interesting for me. Okay, the credentials, certifications.
So in June 25th, 2023, granted, not the exact same audience, but very similarly structured audience, 29% said in-person events and 18% said virtual learning, and then 13% with certifications and credentials. So like really right in, still kind of right in line.
If anyone, a few of us said other. If you said other, if you wouldn't mind going in the chat and telling us what other means for you, that would be great. And while you're doing that, I'm going to move on to, just as I said, we're going to wrap data around this. So I think everybody knows that data is, pretty essential and critical to most things, right? Most of the business that we do as associations, but specifically as it relates to non-dues revenue, here are some key ways, right? So first of all, we have to identify audiences, right? We have to understand the different audiences. We have to segment. We have to understand overlap, right? So whoever is buying chips, we have to make sure that they also buy the salsa, right? So that's kind of what we mean by identifying our audiences. We talked a lot about alignment of products and services, right? So this is not about finding new audiences. It's not about creating new products. It's just about finding a better fit with the products and services and the audiences that we have. Data products is a big one, right? So if there's any one area that I think more associations have opportunities to lean into, it's creating data products. It's very often they can be monetized, right? So that's kind of with today's topic, but even if they're not monetized per se, they make really good member benefits, right? Makes it sticky. So we're talking about making industry data available to your members, or the flip side of that, making member data available and valuable to the industry. So we'll kind of talk about both of those. And lastly, as always, we want to measure progress, right? So, this is non-dues revenue is not quite the kind of thing where we say just try a bunch of things and fail fast and then move on to the next thing. I mean, yes, that is conceptually, it's an idea that we want to embrace, but we're going to be a little bit more deliberate about this. And so fortunately, Teri is an expert in this, and she's going to give us some direction so that we don't have to try a bunch of things that are unlikely to work. So,
I mean, we have a limited amount of time, but I'll try to see what I can get in the time that we're here together today. So, so today we're going to talk, just like we're going to brush over what the landscape of, non-dues revenue looks like right now, and then some new ideas that have hit the market from a very just kind of high level perspective. But Katrina actually shared an article that had not crossed my desk yet, and I hadn't really had a chance to dive into it earlier while we were prepping for this webinar today. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great. The market forces is one of the paragraphs that ASAE is focusing on. They say the supply chain and inflationary challenges since the pandemic have put some downward pressure on associations. Expenses for many programs have increased, cutting into profit margins. And this is a reminder. Jim McNeil said this is a reminder that associations need to be regularly assessing the pricing and profitability of their offerings so we don't fall behind. Because, if we sit back and we look at our P&L reports and we look at our budgets and we see what's happening in the marketplace with, how expensive some of these deliverables that we've already promised to our members are, what they're costing us, and how our profit margins are definitely being cut into, what we tend to go to is kind of the easy button, which is raise dues. But our members don't really like that. They're feeling this in a lot of other areas in their lives as well. And so we say, okay, well, maybe not something so blatant. Let's just increase event cost, the registration cost for our next event. Also, not a very welcome change, right? So how can we, help our bottom lines without like greatly impacting or negatively impacting our member and their own budget that they have to deal with? And so associations are often then like looking around like, okay, well, if we don't want to raise dues and we don't want to raise our event costs, then, where do we start and what resources are needed to get going on a new non-dues revenue program? Or how can we analyze what we're already offering and do that so much better? Or is there an entirely new marketplace that we need to be looking at penetrating, right? Those are all three avenues, the associations can look down, but it's kind of daunting to think about that task, right? As leadership, and you've got the board in one ear and you've got your team that is so strapped for resources in the other ear. And like, how can we come up with new things? And not only that, but the challenge also is that we have a brand new expectation for buying that is in the workplace right now. As we all know, it's kind of been the ongoing mantra for the last few years is that millennials have taken over more than 50% of the workforce, right? But they're not quite the decision makers, right? And so, but in the very near future, the millennials are going to be the decision makers in our industries and in our professions, if they're not already. And so what that means is that we need to be listening and we need to have our ear to the ground with what those new professionals within our industries are wanting and needing from our organizations. And so that is going to be a key factor, for how they buy is going to be how we need to learn how to sell, right? So this is kind of the slide that represents grandma's non-dues revenue. And I haven't told you guys this yet or not, but those of you that might know me closely probably noticed a photo with my daughter climbing or scaling a wall there a couple of slides ago. And yeah, that was her. And these images, or several of the images that are incorporated in the deck here, are from a couple of trips that I took with my kids back during the COVID days, out to Zion and Bryce Canyon. So this was actually a view that we had, which was pretty epic. So if you don't like any of the content that Bill and I are sharing today, you can just live vicariously through one of my vacations. And if you've not made it out to Bryce or Zion, I mean, wow, it's an impressive area of the country, and I encourage you to do so. But anyway, kind of what, our traditional landscape of non-dues revenue looks like. I do this presentation in front of live audiences a lot of times, and I'll have the audience members raise their hand and say, okay, who here is, has a royalty or affinity program? Raise your hand. Keep your hand raised if advertising and sponsorships is another revenue generator for you. Yes, yes. Education and events, products and services. These are all kind of classic grandma's non-dues revenue versions of non-dues revenue ideas. And that's all okay, and when we talk about education events now, of course, we're talking about virtual and in person products and services. We're talking about books, white papers, maybe benchmarking reports, maybe some journals or news articles, and this kind of thing. Maybe it's even a subscription service that your organization produces for your members. But this is kind of what I like to call, grandmas or traditional versions of non-dues revenue. But we are in a new world. Not only we have a new world of buying, habits that are creeping into our memberships, but there is a whole gamut of non-dues revenue opportunities that I'm seeing associations move and shake with. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because this is not where we're going to spend a lot of time today. But this is just, if somebody said to me one day, they said, Teri, where are you seeing kind of like the newest areas of non-dues revenue, percolate and bubble to the surface. Definitely associations spinning up for-profit arms of their existing nonprofit arm. So forming LLCs to be able to provide and execute consulting services within the industry. A lot of times the association is the one that has their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the marketplace. And so they have access to the people in the space that can deliver the best of the best when it comes to consulting services. So we've seen a lot of money being seen there. Corporate sponsorships, supporting DEI efforts. And I think Bill will come back to that one in a minute. But then we've got career assistance and university partnerships. I was coaching a group probably sometime in the last year and a half or two, and they'd never even thought about one of the best ways to grow their student membership and start increasing the member engagement or engaging the younger members is to partner up with a local university. So they offered a free student membership to the university students. Then they started providing unique offerings and webinars just for them. And then from there, because the members and the students were coming, then guess what happened? The sponsors wanted to come too. So they were able to monetize that new program, accelerator program. Oh, I can talk all day about this. The best example I can give you is if you go to EO Catalyst Nashville. EO Catalyst Nashville. They're a great example of how they take newbies or those that are maybe not quite mature enough in the industry and put them in a place among their peers to build them up so that they can get grown up enough to join the big membership. EO Catalyst in Nashville is a great example of an accelerator program. To give you just a little bit of an idea, EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization, to become a member, you have to have a certain amount of business that you're producing every single year. And then the membership is, I don't know, maybe $7,000 or $10,000 a year or something like that. Well, what EO wanted to do is take those that are sitting in a much smaller business funding or business revenue for the year and teach them how to get to that next step so then they can become real EO members. Reimagined affinity programs. Oh man, there's so many affinity programs out there, but there's some ones that are doing some really neat change up things to help associations cut some of the noise and execute the program to generate more revenue. Monetizing successful programs. So you might have something out there that you think is a loss leader and your members are gobbling it up, but you're not actually monetizing it yet. And then market intelligence, we definitely can't ignore that one, especially on a webinar like today's.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So let's, I know you said we weren't going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to stay here for just a few minutes. I want to first of all ask, the participants, if any of you are doing something successful in one of these areas, I would love to hear about it in the chat. I do think these are all like really great ideas. And for the most part, we talk a lot about non-dues revenue with customers and prospects, and we don't hear a lot about most of these. So a couple of things I did want to ask a few questions about. First of all, the corporate sponsorship. So we hear a lot about sponsorships generally, but it's usually about an event, and it's sponsoring something that kind of comes and goes, right? It's a sponsorship or it's essentially like an advertising package or something like that. But talk about the idea of corporate sponsorships, right? Like sponsoring something that's related to your mission or in the case of DEI, for example, right? Because we see a lot of associations that have part of their mission to, for example, something kind of generic like advance the profession, right? And we talk a lot about how you can measure that, and one of the ways that you can do that is by progress in DEI type initiatives. So in any case, I just wanted to give you a chance to speak to that one and just the idea of corporate sponsorships in particular.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times we think corporate sponsorships, we think immediately about those partners. I don't, associations call them all different kinds of things. They call them sponsors, they call them partners, they call them friends, they call them industry partners. You know, there's all kinds of business solutions. You know, there's names for this partner. You know, all over the board. But really, what they do is associations traditionally go to the well of the businesses that are already doing business with their members, right? That kind of makes a lot of sense. And that is a great place to start. And that's a great place to have continued efforts, you know, keep going. However, there is a whole world of Fortune 1000 companies out there that are looking to align and grant funds to associations and nonprofits who have similarly aligned missions. And a lot of these associations who are, for absolutely all of the right reasons, um, looking to implement new DEI programs and strategies, not only because it's important that we're diverse, but it's proven that, you know, implementing, you know, intentional DEI efforts in our businesses creates more innovation. It attracts diverse and top talent. It creates a fair environment for all that are involved. And associations are embracing some DEI programs and initiatives. However, I feel like a lot of times they're just taking these initiatives on themselves. They feel like, okay, this is a new program. We're getting ready to, let's pretend, offer scholarship programs to, you know, areas in need, or go to like a different, you know, a different type of individual or community within their community to help build them up and bring them into a state of the profession so that their entire association community looks diverse, right? And so associations are kind of embracing this and taking on these programs by themselves. But what we don't realize is that these companies, these huge companies out there, are ready to drop some serious bank with associations that have aligned missions, because they also have DEI initiatives as well. But they've got the money to say, hey, listen, we want to go out to our local communities or our national communities or even our international communities and help them do better with the programs that they have. So, you know, you don't have to look any further than consultants like Lori Zoskraska, Bruce Rosenthal, Ed Byers. Each of those consultants all have experience helping associations align. Barbara Armentrout, she's here on the call as well. All of these organizations help help associations and nonprofits locate companies that have aligned missions. And so it's really important that it's not even DEI, maybe it's any new program that you're going to implement into your marketplace. There could be a company that is ready to drop dollars on it to help support that initiative, so you're no longer looking alone out there.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. So one other one that comes up often is affinity programs. Most of the time when they come up in our conversations, it's kind of like it's an afterthought. It's something that's like kind of like on the website they offer, but there's not necessarily a lot of effort or resources, you know, put into developing that. To use the word reimagine. So I'm wondering, you know, what you see in terms of you know, not your grandma's affinity programs, right? But what's happening that's new in that area?
Yeah, some people probably saw affinity programs and missed that reimagined part of affinity programs. It's there for, you know, a very real reason, Bill. But there's UST as a credit card company, transaction company, and they have a program called Fees Be Gone. And this Fees Be Gone program allows for their clients to pass down the credit card fees to the member, right? And then the member can pass the credit card fee down on the consumer. And actually, the association, if the members are using it, the association gets a royalty from that. And the greatest example I can think of for this was the convenience store associations. I had the convenience store association executive director in the hot seat one day, and I said, "What is the biggest problem that your members have?" And he said credit card fees, they're just like grumbling and groaning about credit card fees every single time they're together, and there's nothing we can do about it. And then what do you know? I found this payment processor that actually can build a program that helps benefit the association to give a royalty back to them, but also help deliver that ease and relieve that pain that the members were experiencing by passing on the credit card fees to the consumer. Now, what I'm not going to go into right now is how much consumers are being, targeted and having to absorb all of these extra costs that a lot of the businesses are going down. But if we think about it from the association's point of view, this is a really great concept that could actually help solve the members' need, which is the exact part of the start up of the next slide that we have here, which is like the very best non-dues revenue ideas sit in the middle of this Venn diagram. And the top one that it has to answer is it has to solve a member need. So I like to ask the question of, to associations, I'll just ask them, hey, listen, what is it that your members are complaining about? If you gave them a piece of paper right now, and this is actually a really great practice for your board or any kind of volunteer leaders or committee that you have, this is a great sense to get a pulse on what's happening in the industry marketplace. Ask the question, if I could have blank today, it would make my job so much easier. If I could have blank today with my job, it would make my life so much easier. If you ask that question, they're telling you the answers. You've got to be able to solve that real member need. And then what's going to happen is when the members come, then guess who else comes? The sponsors come, because where the members are, the sponsors are there. Actually, another great way, other than asking a point blank question like that, is to go to your online community and do a quick check on what is talked about the most. Like, what are the broken records that are happening among the topics and the discussions in your online community? And those are your answers for your new programs right there. And so, yes, solving the member need. And if it's good for your members, it's going to be good for your sponsors. And then guess what? When the sponsors come, it's going to generate revenue. And that's where the prime best revenue idea comes from.
So Teri, one of the things I was thinking of at the end of the last slide when we're talking about affinity programs and things is like, this can be a lot, right? It can be a lot of stuff, right? So is it, when we're starting to think about all these different ways that we can potentially make some additional non-dues revenue, I mean, it seems like we could go too far easily, right? Is that something we should worry about?
Well, I mean, for sure. A lot of times, affinity programs get caught in the noise, right? I mean, maybe they generate several $1,000s for the association, but what we know is the events team is doing their events marketing and promotions. The newsletter team and the digital, assets team and communications departments are pushing out their initiatives. Then you've got, just so many opportunities between events and programs and services and all of the discounts and offerings that say affinity programs provide. It's a lot to have in front of your members. And so clarifying what is important to the member and the time that they're in is really critical.
Great. Okay. Just right before we move on, there was a couple of questions in the Q&A and then one in the chat. So there's a question about how do we monetize our affinity programs. I think some of the participants answered that one, so thank you for that. All right, but it's some kind of royalty or some kind of revenue sharing, right, with the affinity partners typically. And then Lee's asking in the Q&A, what's the reason an LLC is formed to house the consulting services?
Right. So it basically, that's a great question. I think a lot of times it's, it's tax situations. It's also I don't know if sometimes consulting services are subject to UBIT. So the taxing situation is separate. Also, it relieves the association of the risk. So if you spin up a for-profit LLC and then you've got consulting services funneling through there, then you've got the diminished risk to the actual nonprofit. So there are probably a whole gamut of other reasons that not thinking clearly on right now.
Yeah, I think you got it right.
But
It's taxes and potential liabilities. Those are the two big ones. So
yeah, Amanda
okay.
echoed me. Worry about liability of consulting associated with the association. Yeah, thank you, Amanda.
Okay. So this idea of the best revenue ideas and kind of narrowing things down. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you guys have seen us talk about a lot about the unique value proposition of associations, how you really need to lean into that, how you have to manage that, to proactively and continuously make sure, right, that your value proposition is resonating. So in this egg in the center, right, asking question like, for product and services, who's it for? What is the unmet need, right? Who are you as an association, right? And this is like getting to your mission and your values, things like that. And then, but mainly all this boils down to what is it that your association can offer or do that's better than other places that I can get that product or service, right? So that's kind of how you kind of come up with your core value proposition. And then the data helps you inform how you roll that out to different segments of your constituency. That's, based on activities and behaviors and sentiment to some degree. And then on the other side, of course, you have to manage or monitor rather, how those things are consumed, right? So we have this value, we have these products and services, and how do our members engage with them, right? So we look at things like engagement scores. We've talked a lot about that. We look at satisfaction, maybe NPS, maybe, and of course we look at revenue, right? Which are the things that that our constituents choose to take part in, and ultimately which ones do they pay for? So I'm going to go to a question for Teri. And this one is related to how do we increase revenue? This is something we've talked about before. And in this case, we're talking about specifically non-dues revenue. And of course, one of the ways we can do it is to raise our prices. But aside from that, right, we've talked before about, well, we can find new audiences. We can, net new individuals or orgs. We can innovate, right, with new products and services, or we can optimize, right, with our alignment, right? We just want to sell more of our existing stuff to our existing customers, right? And so Teri, question, if we're thinking about, and we are, right, all of us here are, about how to optimize our non-dues revenue, which one, does one of these stand out for you more than the other as a place to start?
All of them. Yes, all of them. I will say that I think for the most part, associations are leaving money on the table um, with existing programs, right? And that's the alignment piece, right? Sometimes we need to do a better job with the resources that we have. And I think that the best way to figure out what the best programs are that we're offering and where the best revenue is coming in is a very simple task. I did this whenever I was on staff at a society, oh gosh, 10 or 12 years ago. And it's so archaic and basic and doesn't require a fancy tool or any of that good stuff, which I'm sure those are all out there. But basically, our executive director sat us down and she said, each of the program we spelled out every single thing that our organization did, which by the way, if you've not ever done that, I encourage you as a leader to do that because it's quite daunting what all you accomplish and with the teams that you have, but take an assessment of the programs that you have, and you can put them in high, medium, and low on member engagement and high, medium, low on revenue. And you collectively as a team or as a department, if your team is too big, you can rank these and you say, okay, here's our program. Does it rank high, medium, or low on engagement? Does it rank high, medium, or low on revenue? If it's high in revenue and high in engagement, you need to step it up. You need to figure out how to do more of that, right? Because that means your members love it. It's more than what I call an MLP. It's not just a minimum lovable product. It's a minimum viable product. And how can you brainstorm and come up with new ideas to make that program even better? So sometimes it's right in front of our faces, Bill. Other times, invention is the mother of necessity. Isn't that what they say? And so going back to that Venn diagram and that question, if only I had blank at work, my life would be better. If you're not offering the program that answers that question for your members, newsflash, somebody else is going to do it. And it might be a for-profit and it might be another nonprofit. We don't know. Yeah, absolutely. New products and, new services in the marketplace that can answer those questions are absolutely places to focus. And then of course, new audiences. There is a lot of money out there. There's a the big world out there. And maybe changing your scope of who you're actually serving could generate new revenue for you. So, and I really loved your question on this and these three avenues for new revenue, because it made me think about it, and I hadn't really thought about it a whole lot before today. So I appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, that EO is a great example, by the way, just as we're talking about new audiences, right? So one of the things about, if you're thinking about new audiences, it doesn't mean you have to create a net new product, for these new audiences. It's just expanding the products you have and kind of
Exactly.
reimagining them for a particular audience. And likewise, with the new products, you don't have to go find a new audience for those. You think of an unmet need in your current audience, right? So those are kind of overlapping in that sense. All right.
Absolutely.
So we got about 20 minutes left, and I want to spend some time applying it, figuring out ways, specific ways that case studies kind of, right, for developing some non-dues revenue. And Teri has a couple of really good ones that we want to spend some time on. So let's do it.
So these next two examples are pulled from what is a longer Not Your Grandma's Non-Dues Revenue Ideas deck, but these two are by far the favorites of the crowds usually, because it does require such a low level of intensity on the staff's part. When I started collecting I don't know, somewhere between 300 and 500 ideas on my desk about 5 years ago, new non-dues revenue ideas. What I realized was that the big, new, wild, hairy programs can be really fun for developing new loyalty and developing big amounts of new revenue. But most associations are really strapped for resources, which makes these ideas, creep to the top, along with a whole bunch of others that I have that are kind of easy to implement. So in the case study of the Infusion Nurses Society, they use a tool called Prop Fuel, which allows these email check-ins. Allow these email check-ins to their members. And I think they were doing a Friday fun day or something like that, or check-in Wednesday. I don't remember what day of the week it was, but every single week the members knew that a new poll was going to come to their email, and all they had to do was answer it very quickly. And when they answered it real quickly, then they were taken to another page that allowed them to see the responses from the years before, or from the question the weeks before, right? So they were motivated to fill out this week's because that gave them access to see the previous weeks, right? But the other thing that it did is it actually gave the organization information in a very quick snapshot state of time, right? During COVID, this was hyper imperative for a lot of associations. They needed to get their finger on the pulse, of what was going on with their members in terms of mental health, in terms of business and strategy and money and all kinds of benchmarking and all that. And so these quick check-ins with their members was much more satisfying for both the member and the association, because it was fast and you could get data back from the members right away. And so they had this kind of constant mantra of polls going out every week. So one week, there was a company that is actually a marketing company within the Infusion Nurses group that caught wind of these polls. And they said, oh my gosh, we're getting ready to sink, $2.5 million in this marketing effort and building this new product so that we help infusion nurses do their jobs better. We know for 100% fact this is going to work for infusion nurses, but they didn't actually really have the data to back it up. They didn't know for sure that if they built this thing, it would really work. So what did they need to do? They needed to go to the marketplace to find out how satisfied nurses really were with their infusion experiences. So they asked a simple this company actually went to Infusion Nurses Society and said, hey, is there any way we could sponsor the next poll question? And the infusion nurses the society went, yeah, to the tune of $10,000, right? And so next thing you know, they had a whole new program where every single month there was one poll question that went out that was a sponsored poll question. And when they landed on that page that said, hey, here are the answers from the previous weeks. Thanks so much for taking this poll. Oh, and guess what? You might also be interested in blah, blah, blah company or whatever. And the sponsor had like a little video on the side or a little banner. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but this was a great opportunity for the Infusion Nurses Society to bring in a sponsor for something that they were already doing. Now, I like to say, some people are like, oh, Teri, forget it. Like, we don't have prop fuel. Yeah, I've heard about prop fuel. Okay, fine. Okay. You still do surveys every year or after every event or something. I had somebody the other day tell me that they do 25 surveys a year. And I'm like, when are you doing these? Like, how and why? And who are these people that have time to do surveys? But one way or another, think about the surveys that you send out, the membership surveys. Is there an opportunity to partner with a company within your space that wants some business intelligence? Because if they do, then there's an opportunity for you to actually make money on your survey. Figure that out.
Yeah.
So I like to ask people, what do you think the staff intensity is of this initiative? I say 1 star is like low. Do you think it's low intensity? Or 5 is the highest intensity? So I'd love to have you guys like post in the chat here. Like, do you think it's 1 low intensity for the staff to implement this idea, or 5 kind of like a pain in the butt intensity? And I'm going to pick on 2 of you if you don't mind. We're going to keep moving along for the sake of time here, but I'm going to pick on a couple if you can share. Brandy, can you share in the chat why you think that it's a 1? And then Dominica, can you share in the chat why you think it's a 3? This is sometimes the very best way that we learn. So that's just one idea. Another idea is one that was organically found out, just like the last one with the sponsor polls, by the Engineer Society. So they actually, market research, everybody knows kind of what that is, but that's providing access to your members to ask specific questions about products or services. So in the case of the Engineer Society, Milwaukee thought, oh my goodness, we need access. We're producing massive amounts of products for engineers specifically, and we need to get our hands on 10 engineers a month. So how can we find 10 engineers very quickly that will be okay with us asking them and firing off a whole bunch of questions about products in the marketplace? And so Milwaukee went directly to the Engineer Society and said, hey, could you help us with some focus groups? And all we need is 10 engineers to sit on a Zoom. We're going to show them a few products. Maybe we'll even do a couple giveaways for some products, but we really just need 10 engineers. We need access to them so we can ask them these questions in real time. And so the Engineer Society said, well, sure we can, to the tune of $10,000, right? For this 1 hour of access to these 10 individuals. And next thing you know, Milwaukee had such a robust and amazing experience on behalf of, with the access to those members, that they wanted to do it again and again and again and again. And next thing you know, they've got one going every single month. And it's simply Engineer Society sets up a Zoom. They already have the reputation in the space, right? They have access to their members. And the sponsor knew that this could be a really cool opportunity for them to get this market research. So now we're looking at what, $120,000 in new revenue for a staff person to set up a Zoom so that Milwaukee and 10 other individuals can pop on the line. Absolutely what we call a win-win-win for all three groups, right? Milwaukee wins because they get access to the members. The members win because they are usually the ones that participate are the ones that are the early adopters, and they want to be in the know with what's happening with the tools and the products in their business and along the lines of engineering. They also get a say in how some of the engineering goes, right? So they are a voice from the marketplace. And then the association wins because they have this revenue and they have such a small amount of resources that has to go toward that effort. So I'm not even going to ask about the level of effort because hopefully that was like, we can see that as like a 1 or a 2.
So yeah, so that's interesting. The question that I wanted to ask, for the benefit of the audience is how does something like this get arranged, right? So the two examples that we like, it's kind of like it almost fell in your lap, right? Because you were doing something that was noticed by industry. But is this the sort of thing that that you could look for proactively? I mean, the same way you would look for like exhibitors and sponsors at your event, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Virginia Association of Realtors many years ago did a digital assessment on everything that they had in their digital library, and they found out that this one online forums group was the very most loved digital asset of all of them. And guess how many times they saw sponsors from the time that they realized they needed to have access to this forums group and the time that they actually downloaded the form? Guess how many times they saw a sponsor? 0. If you said 0, you guessed it right. It's because they had their most prized possession, their most prized digital asset had nothing around, no sponsors around it. And so oftentimes we just need to step back and realize what we're doing really well and then figure out ways that we can monetize that. Fortunately, these two groups, organically had other companies come to them, but oftentimes associations aren't that, don't have that fortune.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is just another reinforcement. Maybe the two of the best that I've seen, and I've been talking about this for months now, is unique value and really understanding your value proposition. I mean, this engineer society thing is a really strong illustration of that. And in particular, since it's not just, I mean, this is a really good example of both the things we've been talking about, right? Which is creating value by bringing things from the industry to the members, but then also doing the reverse, kind of all rolled into the same program here. So a couple of other examples. I think if you can learn anything from these last two, this would be already make this hour well worth it for you. A couple of other things that I've seen with other associations. So it's expanded learning, but really expansion of any program. EO was a good example, right? So they have a program for entrepreneurs over a certain revenue threshold. So they created a similar program to train, early stage entrepreneurs to get to that level, right? We had an example last month where we talked about a certification program for 5-year and above professionals, and they created a feeder program for 3 to 5-year professionals, right, to prepare them for this certification track. So expanding learning or expanding any successful program to a slightly broader audience is a great way to think about this. Industry data analysis. We have a lot of customers, prospects across all different industries that aggregate data and then provide it back to members, right? So it's not as though the data is not available, but it's difficult to get to. No one's compiling it. And then even if they do compile it, they don't necessarily have the expertise that your association does to add additional value to it. And then they don't have the audiences already segmented. You already know a lot about them to provide the data back to them. So industry analysis is something that we should all be looking at doing. And it doesn't have to be for money. It can be just as a member benefit as well. Performance benchmarking. So if you have chapters, one chapter wants to know how the others are doing, right? If you have organizations that are your members, if they're stores or they're whatever they may be, their counterparts in other states and regions, they want to know how they're doing. This is something that can be a monetized resource or a very compelling and sticky member benefit. And the last one is out of the box sponsorship. So I've told this story a couple of times. It's about I would call it a hobby association, and they have lots of members, hundreds of thousands of members, and the members all own airplanes, right? So this is a group that um, has a lot of disposable income, right? And so anyway, long story short is their sponsors had traditionally been in aviation, and they came up with the idea to expand that into lifestyle brands, right? So they brought in Ford, they brought in Callaway Golf, they brought in other automobile manufacturers and other things that people with that level of disposable income would be interested in, and they massively increased the breadth of their and revenue from their sponsorship. So, I realize that doesn't apply to every association, but the idea is, your members have interests that are not everything they do is strictly related to the association. So you have to strike a balance between staying true to that unique value, but also maybe capitalizing on some of the members' other interests. So that being said, I want to ask if anyone else has an idea, something that's sort of out of the box, not your grandma's non-D's revenue opportunities, but just for the benefit of the group. If you have something that's worked for you, would love to hear about that in the chat over the last few minutes. And other than that, I'm going to open it up for any other questions mostly for Teri, right? If it's for me, that's okay. But this is a big opportunity here for 4 minutes of Q&A time with Teri.
Hey, Bill, in the Q&A chat, Kelly asked to recruit members for the focus groups. Did the association offer any incentive for members to participate? This is a great question. In the case of the engineers and Milwaukee being such a reputable brand in the space, it's kind of it was easy for them, right? There are enough engineers that they had access to that had that level of interest in what is happening with product strategy. So they had to create waiting lists, from what I understand,
Yeah.
for people to get involved in this. And Milwaukee, again, they've got, pockets deeper than, the ocean. And so them being able to offer up free products for the attendees was no big hairy deal or giveaways for them. They did that, and so that was communicated with the members. But absolutely, the association, for what I understand, did not offer any incentives outside of getting to be on the front lines with new products that are coming to the marketplace and being a
Oh,
part
yeah.
of what's happening with Milwaukee.
So Melissa's asking about pricing, right? How do you any suggestions on how to price your sponsorship? I know there are some consultants that specialize in this, but for those of us that are just getting started, what do you suggest?
Oh boy, this is a webinar all by itself. Pricing. Again, like Bill said, there are consultants in the space who pride themselves on doing the market research and competition, elements, figuring out what's happening in the marketplace and know what the market can bear for pricing. If you have no budget for that, what I like to suggest is go to your cheerleaders, go to your existing sponsor cheerleaders, and don't be afraid to say these things to them. We're getting ready to start something new, and I would love to just get your initial gut reaction and feedback on this fill in the blank product service. And after you've explained it to them, and then you get their initial feedback from them, then don't be afraid to ask the question, how much would you be willing to pay for this? I know that sounds like such a salesy kind of tactic, but it actually works, okay? You just sit back and you be quiet after that, which is, by the way, really hard for me to do. But after you put it out there, and then after you ask 3 or 4 of your sponsors what they'd be willing to pay for it, and it's going to be kind of all over the place, you definitely have a little bit of an easier starting point with what to do. And then the more people that adopt the product or the service, or the more eyeballs that you can get on it, or the more qualified eyeballs that you can get on a product or service, definitely you can start increasing your price from there. But it's really not about just taking their money. It's really about that relationship and that partnership. Because, I'll leave you guys with it. There's one thing that you can take away from this right now. Your sponsors want one of three things. They want leads, they want to be thought leaders, or they want brand awareness. And so if you can find the answers to those things, then you will be king at helping, figuring out the pricing situation. Hopefully that helped.
Awesome. Great question and great way to wrap things up. Appreciate the participation of the audience. And Teri, of course, thank you so much for providing your expertise in the hour.
Sure. Happy to.
If anyone's interested in taking a look at Acumen, welcome you to do that. And otherwise, parts 5 and 6 are coming up, and we hope to see everyone there for those. And thank you again. We'll see you again soon.
Y'all can find me on Teri Carden on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Thanks,
Encourage you to
Bill.
do that. Take care, everyone. Bye now.